The day we all dreaded.
Yeah.
That Christen Press has sustained an injury.
Yeah. And we know the extent of it. Today's the day we found out the extent of it.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. 2 Christen Press stories, but 2 not very happy Christen Press stories. So we're going to start with the first one. Today we found out that Christen Press officially tore her ACL. Christen Press over the weekend had a game against Louisville. And she had a game, all was looking good. She even scored a goal, which was awesome to see. Until in about the 62nd minute, Christen Press goes down awkward, goes down hard. And first of all, you don't see it a lot with Christen. I can't ever remember a game where she's down.
I know.
Yeah, so she goes down.
Weird to see.
Really weird and really awkwardly, and it doesn't look good. Then they're assessing her on the field. Then she gets up, and then it's obvious she is in a lot of pain. A lot of pain. They have to help her up, help on both sides. I mean, it's not looking good. So that was the 60th minute. We don't know the extent of it. That was Saturday. And then today, it came out. She officially tore her ACL from that game and from that fall.
Yeah, it was upsetting news to get today.
It was heartbreaking. You know, a season-ending injury that is out for a long time.
Yeah, it's major. So Christen released a statement, and she said, "My heart is broken. I've torn my ACL, readily accepting all love, prayers, virtual hugs, dog pics, and smudging ceremonies. Love you all."
Yeah, so, I mean, you can only say so much when that kind of thing comes out. And
people have been sending a lot of dog pics.
I have seen that. Yeah, I have seen a lot of them on Twitter and Instagram. And I also was thinking it's also kind of ironic that it happened against the Louisville, because Louisville's kind of like, you know, Tobin's not favorite team.
There's some witches out there who did this, and I want to know who you are.
Yeah, I know, right? And then a lot of people, I will say this, and then we'll kind of get on to the second story. A lot of people are saying one of the reasons why this possibly could have happened or whatever, because Christen was kind of doing everything for Angel City, overworked possibly. She was doing a lot of work in the midfield for helping, you know what I mean? She was doing a lot. So was this possibly an overworked thing? She is the heart of that team. And a lot of people are saying that was possibly one of the issues.
Yeah, could be.
Okay. She actually made the announcement she tore her ACL a little bit later in the day. So we officially got the word. But what happened before that, I think, is almost wilder to me what happened before that. Vlatko officially dropped the roster for the June friendlies and then for the World Cup qualifiers after that. So this was a big roster. And we're not going to really talk about much of this roster. All we're going to really talk about is the Christen
aspect of it.
It's kind of wild what is going on. Before the roster dropped, we did not know the extent of Christen's injury because the way the roster dropped, it dropped in the morning. Christen announced it later in the day. So the roster drops. The roster drops, I don't know, 10 a.m. our time or whatnot. And if we look at the roster, like I said, we're not really going to talk about the roster in this video, but we look at the roster, you know, we see who's playing. We notice Christen is not on the roster. Yeah. My first thought is, she is not on the roster because she is injured. Obviously, it looks serious. We didn't know that it was an ACL tear, but thinking, okay, she is not on the roster because...
The second thought that hit me is because it's Vlatko. Was she even ever on the roster to begin with?
You know, would we ever know? I guess that was the question. Would we ever know? Tobin wasn't on the roster. And the only thing I will say, Pinoe was on the roster. And a lot of people were surprised to see her. Because she hasn't been playing much, you know, and Vlatko always talks about proving themselves on the field. That's his big thing. You have to prove yourself in club play. You have to prove yourself. Pinoe was on the roster. A lot of people were very surprised by that. And so Christen wasn't there. Then after the roster was announced, you know, the reporters ask Vlatko questions about the roster. Christen Press isn't on the roster. Obviously she's hurt. We didn't know it was an ACL tear, and he said something so interesting. He said this.
Christen Press was not on the roster even before her injury. We're very sorry for her injury and don't have confirming information on her status after Saturday.
So this was before she had officially announced she tore her ACL, but he said she was not on the roster before her injury. I think a lot of people were shocked by that statement for two reasons. One, because she wasn't on the roster because she's been playing so well.
Yeah.
But for two is because he even said that. A lot of people would think for him to say that is kind of kicking salt in a wound.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to say, you know, yeah, she wasn't going to be on the roster anyway. So, you know, that was kind of shocking.
It's being a little too transparent there.
It's almost like, what's the reason? He could have just said, you know, he could have said something more around the fact. I guess there's pros and cons for being transparent like that. And there's pros and cons for that, you know. Then he continues to say,
get healthy as soon as possible, but the thing with Christen is she's doing well and performing well, but it's not just her now. It's her competing with the players that are in the front of her outperform the competition.
Yeah, so that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense, especially because Pinoe was on the roster and Pinoe hasn't been playing. So if it's true for one player, why wouldn't it be true for the other? And I think a lot of people said, well, she's been playing really well in the NWSL. And also, Pinoe hasn't even played much recently. So it's weird for him to say that.
Yeah, I just told you, I think it was yesterday or the other day, I was like, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we never saw Pinoe on a roster again. And then the roster came out today and she was on it.
So I think a lot of people are questioning what is going on. Because it's starting to look personal. I think I see a lot of people on the web kind of talking about it. It looks personal. It looks like U.S. Soccer, Vlatko, have something against Christen or something. I don't even know.
I was asked if I got a kick.
It seems very strange. And this is kind of also why I think that I was watching the podcast. It was Lori and Lindsay on the podcast Attacking Third. They have a YouTube channel. They're like the official podcast. CBS affiliate, whatnot. Okay. They had Lori and Lindsay on, and Lori and Lindsay, they were talking all about the roster. You know, what do you think? This, that, this. And one of the main focuses was Christen Press. And Lori and Lindsay said some very interesting things. And it was kind of like a read between the lines thing. She said, you know, there are certain players who, basically she said, there are certain players who know what they're going to get. Someone like Pinoe. She knows she's going to come in for 15 minutes. She's going to come in for 20 minutes. That's what is expected of her. She understands her assignment and she goes out there. Then she said there's other players who aren't willing just to accept what throw off the chemistry in a sense. Who throw off the chemistry. And it was very read between the lines kind of thing that won't just go along with XYZ, you know, that there's problems in the locker room. That's basically what she was saying. Everyone needs to check out this interview because that's pretty much what she was saying. And it sounded like she was saying Christen Press spoke her mind. They didn't like it. This is almost like a retribution kind of thing. To me, that's how I took it. That's how I interpreted this interview. Pretty much. I mean, everyone can kind of interpret differently, but what Lori Lindsay said is that she has inside, you know, she knows she's privy to some behind the scene things that the general public wouldn't be. And that's what it sounded like. So it sounds like Christen Press and maybe some other players, but Christen in particular, is not on the same page with Vlatko and maybe some specific U.S. soccer national team situation. You know,
and maybe for that reason she doesn't want to get called up. Maybe she doesn't want to get on the roster.
That was another thought. The other thought was maybe she had just kind of taken her name out of contention, saying, I don't want to, this is not an organization I want to be a part with right now. But there was a pre-roster that came out, and she was included on the pre-roster, had like 60 names. And so people were saying, well, if she was included on that, wouldn't she, those were the names they could pull from, wouldn't she not be on that pre-roster? So but I thought that too, you know, because she is so welcome. She was so beloved at Angel City, may not just be wanting to be at Angel City, you know, and just focus on that. So, you know, is this a personal, even because Vlatko didn't have to say that about her not being on the roster. And number two, is this a personality conflict rather than a athletic conflict? Is this more of an off the field situation than on the field? It kind of sounds like it. One of the things Lori and Lindsay also kind of said or kind of alluded to is the fact that Lori and kind of Lisa both said this. Megan Rapinoe was going to be almost on the squad no matter what, based on leadership, based on they needed vets, based on that she knew her role. it sounded like Pinoe was going to be, you know, if she could walk, she was going to be on the squad. And I think people are like, they understood that. It kind of rubbed people the wrong way.
Right, yeah, I could see that.
So that's kind of what we know. We're going to do a couple more videos about this, but I was very surprised at everything that happened today. Any Christen Press fan, I mean, we're big Christen Press fans, obviously. Between tearing her ACL and not being included on the roster, it was kind of jarring the whole day. What does everyone think? And like Sarah said, Christen maybe is over the whole thing to begin with, and I could believe that. You know, Christen might just be like, wants to focus on LA, doesn't even want to be on the roster. You know, I could see that. I could see that easily. Just her being, doesn't want to deal with the politics with an organization it's hard to support at times, you know. You know, and also the question, is she done with the national team? I could see her being done with the national team at this point. And also the comments by Lindsay today, I was actually really surprised because it was pretty roundabout what I think people could pick up on, you know, what Lori was saying. Unless I am reading this wrong, unless people think we're reading this wrong. I just want to hear what everyone out there has to say because
well, I didn't necessarily read it that way at first, but then when you mentioned it, I'm like, right. Oh, that makes sense.
Right. Questions, comments down below. What does everyone think? We're going to keep doing videos, but that's our initial reaction. And I don't know, what does everyone think? We are going to do a separate video about the roster, maybe more in depth. Questions, comments down below. We'll talk to
you later.
Okay, have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.